just depends on what type of show it is. But my very first show I got thrown into was Kiss. And it was a huge 50-something crew, big crew.
Hello, and welcome to Start Talking, an Art Gallery of Windsor podcast, where we talk about everything and anything arts related in the Windsor-Essex community.
I'm Micaela, and I'm the Digital Initiatives Coordinator at the Art Gallery of Windsor.
And hi, I'm Abbey Lee, and I am the Audience Engagement Coordinator, also at the Art Gallery of Windsor.
My name is Micaela, and I'm the Digital Initiatives Coordinator at the Art Gallery of Windsor. And I'm here today with Elaine Chatwood from Clair College. She's in the Fashion Design Technician program in the Department of Media, Art, and Design at Clair College. And she has a really stacked resume, actually. She's also a fashion designer. She's coordinated fashion shows. She's worked with a lot of different acts like Kiss, Diana Ross, TLC, So You Think You Can Dance. So Elaine, please tell us how you got to have such a stacked resume, and please start from the beginning when you first realized that you wanted to enter this field. Give us a brief rundown of your education and how you kind of ventured from one path to another here within this field.
Okay, going way back, you're going to find out how old I am. Going back to all the way back from whenever I was a kid, I loved fashion from a pretty early age. And in high school, I definitely knew by grade 10 that I was in between interior design, fashion design, floating around those, and even architecture too. So I've always loved the arts. And I went to Sandwich Secondary High School, and we had a great arts program, an amazing teacher, Perry Thompson, and he really inspired me to be involved in the arts in some way. I knew that I loved that area. I started making my own clothes in grade 8, grade 9, and 10. And I was born in England, and we moved over here when I was about 8 years old. And I went back and forth to England visiting, and I used to go to London quite a lot. I had an uncle there. And I used to see all these amazing fashions and stuff, and they didn't have anything like that here. So I used to come back here and I would do my interpretation of those and start sewing, and I didn't know what I was doing, no idea. So then that's kind of how I got into fashion, and people started coming up to me and they're saying, where can I get this in high school and stuff like that. So early on, pretty well in high school, I really knew what I wanted to do. So I was pretty lucky. I was focused in that way. Then I saved up my money for a year. I applied at Sheridan College. At the time, that was the best fashion school in Canada. And I got accepted there. So I moved up to Oakville, and I went to Sheridan for 2 years. And it was a great course. It was all design based though. So I didn't get any background with business or what to do with these skills, but it was a great design school. So whenever I graduated, I moved up to Toronto, and I worked at a fabric design company. And while I was there, I kind of, I just wanted to get my foot in the door. When I graduated from Sheridan, there was like a big recession on, and my industry had actually, a lot of businesses had moved to China. The whole garment district had a big shake up in the industry. They started to do a lot more offshore, and then there was a recession, so it was hard to get a job. So I just tried to get whatever job I could get my foot in the door, and this was a fabric design company, and they did all prints. So I learned trend forecasting and things like that, and I did anything there. I answered phones, I got coffee, you do whatever you've got to do to start with. And it was a great place to learn that part of the industry. And I realized everything starts at the fabric with fashion design. The fabric is such an important base to start from. So learning that was a great place to start. Then while I was there, I started my business in a tiny little apartment. I lived with my boyfriend, and in Toronto, they always call these 2-bedroom apartments. It's a bedroom, then a little tiny closet. So I started off just in this little closet kind of thing. And I started doing pop-up shops at my house. And it's just so funny because it's kind of all come full circle. So it was like a little trunk show I did in the apartment. And I would just invite people over and have a little cocktail party. And people would order from my collection. And my parents lived in Windsor still. So my mom said, bring that down here. So I had loads of friends and family down here. I would come down and do the same thing. And I kind of did like a little pop-up shop at my mom's house. And then my aunt in Kitchener and my other friend of the family in Hamilton. So I did this little circuit, and I did this for maybe about a year or two. I got about 500 customers. So then at that point, I was able to quit my job and I started my business full time. So I kind of, I worked like, 80, 90-hour weeks for those couple of years, getting that started. And I moved back home, and then I also went to the self-employment assistance program. And that was through St. Clair College, actually. So then I enrolled in that, I got accepted into that. And that let me set up my business for a year. Why you get unemployment insurance or something. They've got a lot of great programs sometimes, with things like that. So I got to build up my business, and I just worked in my parents took me back and I transferred their whole basement into a work studio. So all I did was I sewed and designed for the whole year, and I got enough stock, and I started doing a wholesale collection. So I went around and I contacted all the small boutiques in the area, invited them to a wholesale show. It was like a little mini kind of fashion week type show. They ordered right from there. I got about six orders, which was great, amazing, 6 different stores. And then I continued to do that for about a year. And then I was able to get a studio, and I got a studio in Walkerville. And it was before Walkerville was really cool. And so I was it was whenever Walkerville was a little bit cheaper too. I got a studio there, and it ended up having a storefront. So I had never thought I was going to have a store. So I had a storefront, so I decided just to set up a little selection. And then the retail ended up taking over. It went really well. I went into business with my mom. So that was another thing that I was really lucky, because she's always been an office administrative head person and bookkeeping background. And so that part was great to have. And she's also a great salesperson too. So she helped me out. My whole family, my husband, everybody in my family and friends that I could, they helped me out all the way through fashion shows, lugging stuff everywhere to different shows and doing trade shows, whatever I could do to get the brand and the name out there, I did. So then I ended up having the Chatty collection, my brand, and I did some wholesaling, but I really focused on the retail for about 10 years. And then I still did a little bit of wholesaling in Ontario with a few other boutiques, private boutiques. And then I did that, ended up 25 years passed away. I did that for a good 20, I had the store for 20 years, and I had my business for 25 years. And then St. Clair College approached me to help start a brand new program, fashion design. I think that was maybe 7 years ago. They had no content or anything like that, so I had to build all the curriculum. And quickly, huge learning curve, learning how to teach. So huge respect for teachers now. And I had no idea what goes into that, And the college has been great. They've trained me, and I can't imagine. Whenever I think back at the learning curve that I had, the transferring over in mid-career, like in my mid-40s, to doing something like that was a big change, big change. But I love it, and it's been a great experience, and I get to kind of float in between both worlds. So, yeah. So I think that's kind of where I am.
Awesome. Yeah. And I can imagine, once you've acquired so much knowledge and expertise and experience yourself, you'd be eager to pass it on to the new generation, right? So that sounds really fulfilling.
Yeah, it is. It's great because I tell my students, you're going to make mistakes like all the time. And that's great because you learn from them. And I try to teach them to learn from my mistakes that I made too. And the things that worked for me and things that didn't. And everything's changing all the time. I mean, the amount of change that's just gone on this year with all the COVID, pandemic and everything in our industry is huge too. So always being always learning.
In terms of when you say like to your students, learn from my mistakes, are you willing to share any of those with us here, just in case any aspiring fashion designers are listening?
Yeah, I think, I've made different financial mistakes when I first started growing. I hired people, and now, like, 10 years in, I realized a different way. Like, I was hiring people as sewers and people, and my business is very seasonal, like with production, because I produce everything for 2 months, and then I go into selling, and then I go into a design mode so it kind of rotates, so I'm not like, producing all the time. So going to a different model where I did piecework, and I contracted out to I did all the designing, pattern drafting, cutting, and then I would bundle it up and I gave it to a sewer, and it was piecework. And then I get it back, and I would do all the pressing, all the hemming, all the final packaging and things like that. So I was still a huge part of production, but I did like contract out the sewing, the main sewing part. So just getting into that model, because that was more, that was a lot more efficient economically too, and just learning how to do production and things like that. So I think if I could have, when I graduated, like I said, I was in the middle of a recession when I graduated, and the Toronto garment district had kind of, a lot of it had disappeared to offshore. But I really wish that I would have worked for a larger or medium to larger company, or, somebody else in the design part, just to learn production and learn product development and learn how the process of things like that happen. So in hindsight, I'd maybe like to try and have worked for somebody else before maybe I started my business. I mean, I threw myself in there because I wanted to live in Windsor, and I wanted to create my own job. So, it's kind of like you've got both there. So, but if you can get any opportunity to get any like internship or anything, like, be so grateful of that and try and get as much experience as you can, and just soak it all in. And then things like just the different pathways I took. Like, I kind of went into retail, and I didn't mean to go into retail, and I kind of, in hindsight, I wish I would have just kept on with the wholesale and did pop-ups rather than having a full-time brick and mortar store, because that took a lot of, everybody that knows that has a store, it takes a lot of physical time to be there. And sometimes I felt like my time was more efficient just doing pop-ups, and just having them maybe once or twice a month or something like that instead. And that's kind of the model that I'm going to be going into, because I'm starting a small collection, and I'm going to be doing some pop-ups, but I'm not going to have a retail store. So just like different things, and also whenever I had my business and my retail store, realizing something's not working and stopping it sooner, like, you've hired your friends and you're like, no, and then you're not paying yourself, but you're paying your friends and stuff like that. So like, if something's not working, change it. And don't be afraid to say this is not working, and change to something, have a different model and come up with something different. So yeah, but and don't hire friends. I always say, well, I always say, don't hire somebody you can't fire, But yeah, I think along the way, I've worked with a lot of friends, and they've been great. Like, don't get me wrong, but also when it comes to business is business. So kind of meshing those two worlds sometimes is hard. And I had some great employees, and I'm really good friends with them, and they worked out really well. So just trying to keep those two worlds a little separate sometimes too. It's a little hard when you're the owner, of a business.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can imagine that would be quite a tempting trap to fall into. It absolutely, for your own best interests and ultimately for theirs as well. I think that's pretty great advice.
Yeah.
That was a very thorough description of your journey and the pitfalls. So I just wanted to ask a supplemental question to working with larger acts, if there's any stories that goes with doing that sort of thing, like big stage acts. Like, how did you get into that?
I started off because I just had a connection. Actually, my husband is an audio engineer and he runs the audio in the Coliseum. There was a connection. That's probably the connection that I had initially. But with my background, they needed a wardrobe person. And I said, sure, I'd love to do it. So it depends on the act. Every act's different. So sometimes they have a wardrobe crew that comes with the bigger acts and you assist them. Or they come with no wardrobe person and you're the wardrobe person working with them in the dressing room. So it just depends on what type of show it is. But my very first show I got thrown into was Kiss. And it was a huge 50-something crew, big crew. I had never worked there before. So, and there was some funny things that happened and stuff like that, but just like our students, always learning. So it was a new field for me, but I loved it. I loved it. I like to have deadlines, and I like that is very deadline orientated, because I can't believe how great like Caesars is about bringing acts in and setting up this huge stage in hours. It's amazing how they transform stuff, and everything is so set on schedule and things like that, including like we had to get all the Kiss armor from the night before out of all the road cases and clean all the fake blood off it and everything like that. And so it was a real fun one to have as my first crew to work with. And they were a really great crew. I actually got offered a job that day to go on the crew with them. So that was really nice too. They were really great. They were a British crew that was the wardrobe, because the wardrobe people also helped them with the makeup and stuff like that too. But it was a great crew, yeah. I loved it. And then I did Diana Ross too, which was a total privilege. And I was just honored to like touch these Bob Mackie gowns, that are going to be in a museum someday, and I had to repair some of her beading and her sequins and things like that on there. So I was doing that all day with her personal assistant, and that was like a great honor to do that. And then I've worked like with Penn and Teller, and you do all their wardrobe, you get everything ready, and sometimes the shows they're changing throughout the show. So, you have to do things on stage, like just off of the wings, like just you can't see. We have a quick change booth. And that's like things like So You Think You Can Dance is like kind of like a really quick paced fashion show. They have, I think 10 dancers, and they all have anywhere from 8 to 12 changes. So it's a lot of clothing. It's quick. It's like really dark, and you've got all these little zippers and things like that. So you're actually changing them. And then a lot of times you have 2 shows in one day. So you got to get everything back in order and get it all lined up again, and make sure if anything needs repaired, anything that dancers need. I mean, I've even stood on the side and helped them stretch and stuff like that, So it's like whatever. So I like that. I like change. I like doing things that are different all the time, and I like fast pace too. So if you like something that's kind of fast paced, it would be a great career for somebody to go on the road with these acts once, the world gets back to normal, and everybody can start touring again and things like that. These types of jobs are great for somebody in their 20s or something that can travel, and it's hard work though. The things that I've seen, it is hard. They work hard whenever they're on the road, for sure. You don't get a whole lot of, downtime sometimes. But the people that I've worked with that have been really good, I've learned so many little tricks off them about, a quick change booth, setting things up, being really efficient, and then just all these little industry tricks and things like that. It's a great experience. And I brought in about 8 different students and graduates to come and help me work there too. So, and they've done a great job too, and the students just love it. Yeah, and they get to see if they want to get into this too, or going to costume design or things like that. Not only just being a stylist and being a wardrobe person on tour, you can also be the person designing the clothing for these tours. And everything's about functionality and things like they have to be able to move, like all these dancers, like seeing the clothes from So You Think You Can Dance, they have to be functional on top of being beautiful, and you have to be able to get them on and off really quick, and you have to be able to wash them somehow, you know. So there's a lot that goes into the thought behind those costumes. It's an interesting field. I love it.
It sounds, yeah, super energetic, super hectic, and you know that's the sort of thing, like personally I thrive off of that kind of energy when it's really frenetic and there's a lot of different things to do.
Yeah, it is a great, and also like working with, I mean, we're so lucky to have like a place like Caesars in Windsor. Like this is a world-renowned venue that then world-renowned acts come through there. So to have that and work with people like that and have that opportunity here is just, it's great. Yeah. So, and it teaches you deadline. It teaches you, you've just got to go with the flow. If you're somebody that needs to have everything exact all the time and everything's going to go perfect, this isn't for you. Because you're just got to be able to adapt and if troubleshoot and quickly just get it done, you know. So if you like things like that, definitely, yeah.
Thank you for warning us ahead of time that we need to be adaptable. Yeah. Speaking actually of being adaptable, can you tell us a little bit more about, like, throughout your various roles, the different hats that you've had to wear? So customer service versus marketing versus the actual design part versus physically putting the clothing together. Is it easy to switch gears like that, or do you kind of have to like reframe yourself entirely before you can move from one thing to another?
I think that's probably the biggest issue entrepreneurs have, especially small business people, be it whatever industry you're in. I think just spreading yourself too thin. And what I've learned, and this is a mistake too that I made in the beginning, I tried to do everything, right? And because you don't have the money to hire people and things like that. But what you can do is you can barter things and trade things and work and collaborate with other, like I've always collaborated with a lot of different arts people in Windsor. Windsor's been a great area for photographers, for artists, for musical acts, things like that. So I have collaborated a lot with that. But I tried to do everything, and it is hard. It's like, and you spread yourself too thin. So just switching from one to the other is something that, unfortunately, you have to do whenever you first start. But if you can find somebody that you can maybe barter your bookkeeping, say, and make them a couple of dresses. If you're good at making dresses, try and do that. And then, you know, but understanding, like, whenever I took the self-employment assistance program, part of that was you had to take a couple of business courses and things like that. And then I actually went to night school and took a couple of courses on how to start a business, how to write a business plan, because I had no background in any of that. I also took any sort of accounting type of courses just to learn basic bookkeeping. You can do a lot of stuff online now, you know, things like that. But I took a couple of marketing type of courses too, and things like that. So you definitely have to understand the business side. Doesn't mean that you have to do it all, but you have to kind of understand that. But going back and forth, a lot of times I love being in like the setup that I had my store in the front. We owned the house, so I lived behind the house, and then we built a studio in the back. So I worked in the back. I knocked down our old garage, and it became a studio. And that's where I did almost all my designing and things like that. So I loved being in my studio. And then I would get called through. I had a little buzzer, and if we were busy in the store, my mom took care of the store along with, we had another couple of great part-time people too. And so they would take care of the store, but if they got busy or somebody needed me to go fit something or do something like that, I'd go through. But I didn't work in the store that much, not as much as my mom did. So, but understanding the retail side though is a huge part of the industry. And I think a lot of designers don't get that opportunity to have your clothing, see it on somebody, because the difference between the body shape of a 20-year-old to somebody that's had kids and is 45 or 50 or something is huge difference, you know, like, so just understanding the shapes and the needs of your customer and who your target market is, and seeing the clothing on them was great. It was priceless in the store. So I got to see that, and I got to go back into my studio and fix and tweak little changes and modifications to cater to my customers' needs and just become a better designer. But going forward into my new venture that I'm doing, I'm going to be just focusing on what I do best, and then like subcontracting stuff out, you know. So if you can do that and just figure out what you're really good at, and concentrate on that, and see if you can somehow subcontract other things out, you know, or barter or whatever, you know, to start off with. But I think that would be my advice. Just don't spread yourself too thin.
That's solid advice. And like, I know it's unavoidable sometimes to spread yourself too thin, but yeah, the sooner you can get yourself to that point where you're in your wheelhouse, the better, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also obviously gotten yourself to the point where you can do philanthropic endeavors with your practice. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it started back whenever I had Chatty and I was doing fashion shows. I always wanted to put an element in there to give back to the community somehow. So my fashion shows, I would never, if I just got everything paid for, like I got all the costs paid for, I was happy. I never expected to make money out of fashion shows. So I tried to do, I always brought in a charity. So I'd either give them part of the ticket sales, or we'd do a silent auction, things like that. I worked with hospice. I've done Windsor Regional Hospital, Hiatus House, a number of other charities too. And actually that moved on to whenever I went to the college is all about kind of community and involving that type of thing too. So it kind of transferred over really easily. So we work with, like, we every year our program does some sort of charity aspect project. So we've done things like with United Way, with pajama pants for men's shelter. We've worked the last 3 years, we've worked with Windsor Regional Hospital, and we just meet with them and see what they need. So one year they needed, the MRI department didn't have any little kids scrubs. So they wanted something whenever the little kids come in that kind of made them happier and, you know, kind of less stressed out and things like that. So our students created fabric. They took cotton fabric and then they printed all these little, they actually drew them and then they carved them out. And we just did kind of like a wood print, kind of wood block print on the fabric. And they did all these cute little designs for kids wear. And then we made them into these little kind of kimono style pajama sets. So they did little bottoms and tops, and that was really cute. So we did that one year. We did 100 dresses for Africa. So a nurse practitioner at the college, she goes to Ghana every year, and she approached us saying that these little kids don't own one dress. You know, they only have, like, you know, really basic clothing, and they needed something with a little sleeve, like on their shoulders, to protect them from the sun. So she gave me a couple of different things we had to do. Then I brought that to the students. We had a little design contest, and they created it. And we said, at the time, we said, oh, we can do 100. 100 was a lot. So we created 100 with the instructors and the students, and we donated them. That was great to see them, and we saw pictures of the kids in Africa wearing them and stuff. So a lot of things like that. And then this year, our students, even though we were all thrown into, you know, around March break, everybody transferred over to online, and our program kind of shifted over really quick. All our students, mainly the second years last year, they all right away saying, you know, does the hospital need masks and all this stuff? So they made 640 masks right away, and we donated those to Windsor Regional Hospital because they were in need for PPE, just for, not for the actual nurses and all that, but it was for, you know, people coming in. Yeah, so things like that have kind of transferred over, and I hope to kind of strive on the students, always try and give back, and it's all win-win situation. I mean, during my fashion shows, yeah, I did that, but I also got some great coverage, and it worked well for both. Help raise money and awareness for a charity, and then also it does raise awareness for my brand too. So it's great, and I love to connect it with something in the community if I can.
Actually, in that same vein, I was going to ask how the pandemic has affected your practice and your position as a professor as well. So the masks, obviously, that's excellent news, but there must have also been some drawbacks too.
Yeah, it was a big transition for everybody. Everybody went online, which is hard for our program because we're hands-on. So the students did an amazing job kind of pivoting and moving over there to do that too. It is hard because we have garment construction, pattern drafting, draping, those types of things have to be in person. But we're trying to do our best, and we're still in that, like everybody else. So our students have been doing really well. We've been doing some Teams meetings, and we have all online classes, lots of videos. So students have really stepped up to kind of adapt. And even I rewrote a couple of my courses to kind of like, one of the courses was talking about fashion presentations and things like that. Well, that's all changed now. So I made them do a project and research what everybody's doing around the world to present all the different ideas and things like that for fashion. So, and just changing. And then also, in some ways, it's been the slowdown and everybody looking like fast fashion in our industry has just been a huge problem with sustainability, with landfills. Like textiles is the second biggest problem in landfills. So it's a great time to slow down and have a look at our industry because it's not working like that. That's not sustainable. The amount of clothing that people are buying is just too much, and it's not quality clothing, a lot of it. So just trying to change everybody and educate them in the way that they need to buy quality, they need to buy sustainable fabrics, and buy less. Things, out of sustainable fabrics and things made locally or domestically are going to be a little more expensive. But if you buy less, people only generally wear 20% of their wardrobe. So you don't need all those clothes, So just being more like, I'm trying to educate our students, and so they can understand this and then actually educate other people too about how important this is. And prices are coming down on all the sustainable fabrics because people are using. I would love it to be the norm. Everything, like having recycled polyester. Why are we not using that all the time? Having organic cotton only. I would love to see that be the norm. I don't want to say all fast fashion companies are bad, because some of them are trying to address the problem. And so an example would be like Zara. If you go online, they do offer a lot of fabrics now that are recycled or recycled polyesters or organic cottons and things like that. I'd like to see a lot more, but at least it's a start. And then there's companies that do some greenwashing, and they're just trying to make you feel good about bringing a piece of clothing in that's a fast fashion piece. The problem with these fast fashion companies is the fabrics that they use, most of them are synthetic blends. And it's very hard to separate some of those and recycle them if they're blends. So them saying that they're recycling this clothing, there was a documentary, and sometimes it's like 1% of the clothing is getting recycled. But they tend to make you feel like, oh, pop your thing in this box and get a $10 gift certificate to spend more, So that type of greenwashing too, and kind of educating, where does this end up? Understanding that, and I think that's a great thing for our industry. Stella McCartney does some really innovative things with initiatives trying to change laws and things like that, and tariffs and innovative fabrics. So I think everything starts off with the fabrics, because that part of the industry is the big polluter. you should know the transparency of where your clothing's made. Some of these offshore countries that we're using, the labor, the exploitation of labor is just horrible. So just knowing where it's made, and just because it's made offshore, there's lots of great companies that follow the rules. But whenever companies are not transparent on their websites and things like that, and showing you where their things are made, I would question it. So I'm just kind of trying to teach our students to question, because if a company is doing something really well, they'll want you to know about it. And I think hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a big shift, because it can't go on the way that it's going on.
Thank you so much for getting into that and addressing that, because that can't go unaddressed at all. I think especially like this generation, this up and coming, just starting their careers generation, cares a lot more about these kinds of issues than perhaps many of their predecessors did. So
yeah,
thank you for passing that knowledge on. As kind of a final question here, I just wanted to ask, do you have any sort of, and you've already given a lot, but do you have any more sort of career advice for people who are trying to kickstart a career either in fashion or in a path that isn't as traditionally secure, and maybe they're kind of receiving opposition from their family or friends, trying to push them in a safer direction, but they really want to follow their passion and what they're good at? Do you have any sort of advice? I know you had a very good support net for yourself, but might you have any advice for people who are a little bit more alone in their endeavors, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was very lucky to have support, and I come from a creative kind of artistic family, but we've also I come from a family that has I have a really good work ethic, and I was raised kind of around entrepreneurs and different, businesses and things like that. So I've never been afraid to work hard, and I think number one, you've got to have that in the industry. But if you're trying to get into fashion, my recommendation too is you could go into a program, something like St. Clair College program, or any of there's a lot of programs that are really good. Like our program, what I kind of pushed when I started it, I didn't want it just to be a design program, because whenever I got out of college, that's what I got. I knew the design side, but I didn't know how to do a costing. I didn't know anything about product development, about how you actually take your design and it ends up, how do you sell it, and how the whole process from production and supply chain and all that stuff. That is so important. And so we teach our students that. So depending on what area you want to go into, because there's so many, I have students that come into our program, and it's just so funny. The first week of school, I talk to them and I'm like going, I kind of want to know their background a little bit, and what brought them to the program, and what type of area do they want to go into in our industry. And 95% say, I want to be a designer, because a lot of people don't know what different jobs are in their industry. Designing is probably like 5%, if that, in my industry. And there's great jobs in product development, a technical designer, pattern drafter. Like technical designers and pattern drafters a lot of times get paid more than a designer. It just depends on, those are great jobs to have. And if you're somebody that's really into drafting and doing like things really exact, you would be great in that. But if you're somebody that's more into design part, maybe you want to go into the draping and designing part. So there's production, there's supply chain, there's costume design, there's sewing production, there's just understanding the whole production process is something that if you can get into any experience with that, hands-on experience with that, that's a big eye-opener. Like I take our students up every year to, we go on a big field trip to Toronto for 2 or 3 days. And like we went to, the Canada Goose Factory, and just for them to see the process of 60 something people touch this jacket throughout the process, and understanding things that they do, that they do in our program, how they transfer into that. understanding trend forecasting, and then even going into the area where you're a rep for you're an agent for a designer. You have to know all about fabrics. You have to know if you're going to be a buyer for a retail store. You have to know all about fit, fabrics, style, design, quality. There's a quality assurance jobs, fabric science, like where you're testing all the fabrics. So even if you want to go into, I recommend students too, while you're in college or something, or just after, retail jobs are great because you learn a lot. And you learn a lot on the shop floor and working with customers in clothing too that way. So yeah, there's just so many areas. I love our industry. That's what I like about it. There is so many different facets to it. So you can go into all those different types of jobs. So, but you have to get, in our industry, you do need to have the skills. So you have to, if you are going to go in, you've got to learn pattern drafting. You've got to learn technical design, digital. We do digital pattern drafting too. So these are all expectations that whenever you get an entry-level job, they expect you to have a 2-year diploma or more. You've got to have those skills, definitely. But I would highly recommend, especially if you're going to go into business and start a brand, get some sort of business background too, and combine them. I have some students that came over from the business program after they graduated, and they did our design program, and I go, that's because they wanted to start a business. And I said, this is excellent, this is a great pathway to take.
Well, thank you so much for all of your advice, all of your knowledge and insight, and for revealing about your background and everything, so that we can kind of get a clearer idea of maybe how we'd like to go forward ourselves with our own careers, maybe in a similar way. I'm saying our, even though I'm not in fashion design myself, but I'm speaking kind of on behalf of the populace tuning in. So thank you so much for your time, Elaine. I really appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much for listening to Start Talking. We hope that you keep talking about all of the things that we've spoken about today and all of the art in our local Windsor-Essex community, even long after our podcast episode is over. If you're interested in finding out more about the Art Gallery of Windsor, you can find us on our website at www.agw.ca, or you can follow us on social media at AGW401. Have a great day, everyone. Stay safe and be well.